Good. Good.
Okay. All right, welcome everybody. The cast of FinDepth is here, joined by some extras, which we're very glad to have, and we'll get to them in a second. And the purpose of this one is games are finally here. Good Lord, it only took, what, like 7-8 months, it seemed like? 2 years, 3 years, I don't know. It seemed like it forever, but we're definitely excited. Football's back, for sure, thank goodness. Preseason was a little bit of a taste, but we're back to regular season and what counts, and all the skepticism is back, but it's kind of that nervous excitement, so it's a little bit of a good skepticism. Hopefully, we'll see after Sunday. But anyway, so we're going to talk about the how the Patriots match up with the Dolphins. A lot has changed in the last year. We beat them Week 15 last year, but we're going to kind of talk about how their roster's changed and how Belichick's going to adjust with his new roster and some of his new all-pro and all-everything weapons on defense, which just isn't really fair. But let's start this off. If you guys want to all say hello to the pretty camera and our guests.
Hello.
How are you all doing out there in the Twitterverse?
And Pablo's here today too. How's everyone doing?
So we've got both founders today, and then I guess shall we talk about kind of what everyone's been talking about since Thursday Night Football and Sherman being not targeted, having a wide receiver on, that's kind of led a couple of people, or quite a few people, to speculate as to how we'll see Revis deployed on Sunday. And Wallace has talked about how kind of he's excited about the matchup, but then I think through most of preseason, a lot of talks about being Revis on the second wide receiver and then rolling the coverage over to the first wide receiver. And then we've also seen kind of Bill Belichick in the last couple of years play matchup football, with even seeing Talib, who is Revis's, or Revis is upgrading that position to Talib, but offers a similar skill set of being able to lock down a player, and we saw him on Jimmy Graham. So maybe if we kind of each talk about the pros and cons of, and the ways in which the Dolphins can negate those three kind of scenarios, whether Revis is on Wallace one-on-one, whether Revis is on Hartline and they roll the coverage, or whether we see Revis maybe follow Clay. So I don't know if anyone wants to jump in on any of those, kind of what they think may happen.
Well, if we look at what they did in Tampa with Revis last year when we played him, they had him shadow Wallace. The question does remain is, does Belichick do that, or does he do something more similar to what Rex Ryan did, which was keep him on Clay? And it's kind of one of those things that you can't know until we see it, especially because in preseason they look completely different schematically than they did last year.
Yeah, historically Revis will usually, he's opposite of Sherman, he'll actually follow whatever receiver that they decide before the game. Usually it's just whatever the best receiver is. Miami's a little bit of a different challenge because there is no real best receiver. You've got basically one guy that's a little bit different than everyone, well, a lot different than everyone else, and then a whole bunch of guys that kind of fit in with each other, and even Clay's similar with that. I think with Jamie Collins at strong side, I think it's more likely that he's going to cover Clay. He's a little bit more able to than most teams that we're going to play throughout the season. Very athletic, very fluid player, can get downfield in a hurry. It's not necessarily a bad thing for Miami if that happens, just because Clay is such a beast down the middle. But I would, if I was New England, that's how I would do it, and then I would actually keep Revis. I would put Revis on Hartline, kind of like Oscar mentioned, and then kind of roll coverage over to Wallace, because you're going to have to do that anyways. And just try to beat the Dolphins one-on-one. I mean, the Dolphins have a deep wide receiver core, but an overly talented wide receiver core. it's one of those things where we're going to have to win with the slot receivers no matter what they do, because if they put Revis on Clay, that's actually the best thing I think for the Dolphins, because then you've got an outside receiver on a mismatch. They've got, I don't know, Brandon Browner's suspended, isn't he?
Yep.
Okay, so that's kind of nice.
We're going to have probably Alfonso Denard again opposite Revis.
Okay, so that's a really good thing. You can pick on Denard.
Denard.
Yeah,
As far as their cornerbacks go, I would honestly have to say that Denard isn't the weak spot, and it's their slot cornerback. I know his name.
It's Arrington, isn't it? Kyle Arrington.
Kyle Arrington.
Yeah.
He consistently allows an over 100 passer rating into his coverage, and I think that plays into us, because if a linebacker is put on Clay to try to take him away, well, we're going to be able to run our little slot screens and our little slot stabs that we want to run. Our little running back dump offs and all these little things that should gain us 5 or 6 yards. If it's run properly against the proper defense. I think we're going to have to live off some of that. Because and the question is too, we haven't seen Gerard Mayo in the preseason at all. I guess he was injured. I've heard he's back, but we haven't seen him. But we have seen the Patriots use a predominantly 3-4 system, and in that 3-4, they seem to be very heavy using Collins and another linebacker. I don't know how to pronounce his name. It starts with a B. It's like Berustic or something like that. And then Hightower was over to the weak.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, I'm not going to try pronouncing that name.
Yeah.
I think they did. Did they?
They might cut.
I think they cut him. I don't see him on the 53.
Okay, so if they cut him, then
It'll be Fleming.
Well, let's see. The Mayo, Hightower, Collins, and in the 3-4 it would be Chandler Jones and Ninkovich with 2 guys in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd probably, I guess, be Mayo and Collins, right? Hightower wouldn't be the smart move, I would imagine.
I'm not sure. Their backups are Chris White and Darius Fleming, so I don't know. I don't know too much about those 2 guys. That's not really a good situation for them if they're going in 3-4 very often.
Yeah.
Right, they'd have... What's that?
I was just going to jump in here for a second. I mean, one of the things I think a lot of people are curious about is to see Laser's offense really in its full form, right? I mean, I think everybody expects it to be more up-tempo than it's been in the preseason. I think it's a little bit, maybe a little bit optimistic to think that it's going to be crazy fast, like Chip Kelly fast, because we didn't really see much of that in the preseason. Granted, it's all the preseason caveats, but going back to the receiver matchups with the corners and the linebackers on New England. Miami obviously doesn't have a world beater, Brandon Marshall or Calvin Johnson type, but as Dustin, as you've written about in the past with West Coast offense or West Coast offense hybrids, it's not really about that, right? It's about having multiple guys who can run tight routes and who are reliable and getting the ball out fast.
Right. I mean, not to cut you off, but it would help if you had a guy that was as good as one of those guys that fit with the rest of the guys. Because I got some flack on Twitter saying, "Oh, you don't want a Brandon Marshall." No, it's not that I don't want a Brandon Marshall. A Brandon Marshall type guy Marshall runs great routes and uses his body to his advantage. But here's the thing. You can't only have one of those guys in the West Coast offense. If all of your guys are basically kind of clones of each other, then you will be able and can all be versatile and can all run crisp routes. You're gonna get open.
Yeah, and that's what I'm getting to here is that we're talking about mismatches ultimately, right? And so we got Charles Clay, who's a tough matchup. He's kind of a beast down the middle, and really for any. He's not an easy matchup really for anybody. But if you get him up against the right linebacker, he could eat him up. And at the same time, Ian, as you were mentioning, if we can get Wallace on the outside with his speed, then that's a, granted we got to hit those passes, but that's an issue too. Mm-hmm. And I guess I think a lot of us are just really curious to see if Laser can use some motion to get the matchups we need, regardless of whether Revis is shadowing Wallace or Clay or how they have it set up. I think a lot of us watch Seattle's game, and by no means am I saying Mike Wallace plays like Percy Harvin, but I think that the way that Seattle used Percy Harvin to spread out the field, and I've debated a little bit on Twitter whether he actually had a productive game because his touches were impressive, but he could have had even more production. But the fact of the matter is he spread that defense out all over the place for the rest of the offense. So I just wonder if we can do that a little bit. Now Wallace has to catch those balls too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we see Wallace kind of get used in the kind of in similar ways in like jet sweeps, or maybe we see the kind of like zone read shuttle passes kind of that we've seen set up in play action. We've kind of seen a wide receiver sweeping around behind the backside of the play into space as kind of a triple option in place. I think we see kind of Wallace utilised in that way early to kind of get him touches, and so he doesn't start sulking and start kind of running. You see if he doesn't get touches early, he gets a bit lazy in his route running, gets a bit... I mean, he is playing every snap and he is running goes quite a lot, so that takes a lot out of you as well. It's hard to run those 100% every time. You need to give him a reason to do that as well. He's going to be... So I think we kind of see him, and I think we're going to see a screen game a lot, and Wallace I think is going to be part of that because, I mean, although Benson's had a 1,000-yard runner every year he's been in the league, he might not this year, and I think he may have still, I think we might see a running back have 1,000 all-purpose yards, but I'm not sure it's going to be being on handoffs just because of the way in which the interior line is playing at the moment with the current 3 guys inside. Maybe when Pouncey's there and Billy maybe gets the start, then I could see some movement. But I don't think we're going to run much to the left. I think Shelley you can run to the right in between him and James. I think James looks much better when he has a guard that can do something and get some movement. Just, obviously he's not being asked to do as much, so he can hold his guy up and not completely collapse the play, but if it's all falling apart, he knows he can't hold it, make a hole, so he kind of gives up on it. So I think that's going to be kind of interesting element is what we do to negate a lack of potential running game. I think when we talk about play, we have seen even Dion Sims being lined up in the backfield, then motioning out to the either to inline or to slot position. I think we could see that quite a lot, and that was kind of as soon as motion and set or snapping. So you're kind of manipulating the matchup in that way, so you can't really put a corner. I mean, you can have a corner on a back, but it's not going to be great. And we even saw kind of like a cross, so we're changing the strong side as the tight end. He would kind of like cross in front of him, so it's quite like a clever manipulation of matchups in that way, which hopefully we see Clay or Gator even if he's active, which I assume he will be. So that, I think those are going to be kind of, if we do see Revis on Clay, that's going to be one area in which we see a way of getting off that matchup. I think one thing we talked about, Pablo, you mentioned that kind of you want reliable receivers that can get open. I think that's one of the main reasons in why Miami kind of failed at the end of last year is Hotline became not very reliable. There was a couple of big third down drops. He obviously got hurt in the last game, but he was terrible against the Bills as well. And so once we didn't have 2 outside receivers that you could rely on to get a third down, it becomes much more limiting what you can do in a West Coast offense. You want to be able to do something, you want to be able to kind of spread the ball out and know you've got one guy you can hit and he's going to catch it. I think that we kind of lost that at the end of last year. So maybe if we go, I think that we've kind of like talking about kind of matchups and scheme of the Dolphins. So maybe if we talk about kind of, we've kind of talked slightly about how the Patriots have kind of changed scheme-wise. They've had quite a lot of personnel turnover. Obviously, you won't see Browner, as we've kind of alluded to, but they've changed at linebacker core. They've changed the secondary. They've changed quite a lot in the past 2 years. Up front, they don't really have that much. They've got quite a lot of edge players, but they're quite thin interior-wise. Dominic Easley is going to be active. It sounds like he's healthy, so we haven't seen him at all in pre-season. I mean, that could be, if he's still got that first step quickness, that could be pretty interesting for the interior players we have, especially if he's lined up between Shelley. I mean, that's one weakness in Shelley's game is kind of pressure up his left side, and if you have centre, I can't ever remember his name, but he was getting beaten by Paul Solo with speed in the first pre-season game. So if you kind of shooting that A gap between those two, I think easily could have some production. So I don't know if anyone has kind of any thoughts on the defensive line, then maybe we'll go to the Miami defensive line and Patriots offensive line, so we've got a bit of turmoil there as well. Anyone got any hot takes?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think I also. One thing you can say about their defensive line is, I mean, the big elephant in the room, pun intended, is Wilfork, right? I mean, the guy's just a monster there in the middle, and I'm a little bit curious to see how we do. We'll talk about the Dolphins' offensive line in a bit, but curious to see how Satelli and company handle a guy that size and just of that power. And I don't know if you guys have any thoughts in terms of what you expect there.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the concept of we really just don't know for sure. Are they running a 3-4? Are they running a 4-3? Because for me, it makes a difference. Because if they are running a 4-3 like last season, then and the reason I keep bringing up that is because on their website, their depth chart is labeled out as a 4-3. It has 3 linebackers and so on and so forth. Then really, Satelli's role will be a double team chip type of role as opposed to straight up taking on Wilfork, and I think that is a benefit to us. So I'm kind of hoping that that is the case. Now, Wilfork, do we really know what he's going to be? There can be questions about him. He's, 35, just came off an ACL. He looked okay in preseason. Nothing world beating, but it is just preseason. So there is a big question mark for me with Wilfork. I'm much more scared of or not scared, but it's a challenge for James to go up against Ninkovic.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that edge players are more talented than on paper now than their interior players. Perhaps that changes if Easley is who we are, but maybe it's good seeing them kind of week one. And I think this is kind of another thing that's maybe not talked about much is Patriots are pretty slow off the bat most years. So I think this is a good time to meet them kind of at home, noon kickoff. It's like there's a lot in Miami's favour, even though they're quite. I think are they the second biggest underdogs after the Philly-Jacksonville game or something?
Mm-hmm. Now I know they have that connotation of being slow out the gate, but at the same token, I think they've won the last 10 or 11 opening games or something like that, right?
Yeah, they have won the first game a lot. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that correlates.
Should we talk about
what about? Okay.
Should we talk about the Patriots offensive lineman, because yes, Miami's has been kind of the talk of the last year, but they've obviously traded their best interior lineman, and now don't really know what the interior line's going to look like, what the right tackle, Cannon, or so I don't know.
Yeah.
That's something to take that one.
Yeah, their
That's a
line
really-
is definitely vulnerable. Oh, sorry. Their line's definitely vulnerable. I mean, there's no doubt that the Dolphins' defensive line is fantastic. Entering the season, at least, I mean, from what we saw in preseason, we saw flashes from everybody. We saw Randy Starks look good. Earl Mitchell did pretty well. Cam Wake looks like fresh out of like 2010. He just looks awesome. I mean, he's always awesome, but last year there was some concerns, I think, with him slowing down and injuries, and he looks fully healthy. So that's automatically a huge advantage for Miami. That trade where they traded Mankins is really, really interesting because, yeah, I mean, I understand the 4th-round pick is nice, but ultimately I think we need to remember the 4th-round pick is usually a guy like Akins, where he's not going to help in 2014 or 2015. Ideally, at least. I mean, if he does, that's just awesome drafting and luck. But Josh Klein was one of the worst linemen. I went back and I watched for my BR report. I watched the Eagles game and I watched the game after that. I can't remember the team who it was, but he was really bad. I mean, he's going to be starting. Right now he's slated to start at left guard. I don't know if he'll start there or if they're going to move someone around. I know there was talk of Cannon starting at tackle and then someone moving inside. It was really strange. Everything that I've gotten from Patriots people is that they're a mess on offensive line.
Yeah, they're playing musical chairs for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, as bad as Miami's been at doing that, I mean, there's a reason why Miami's been doing that because we literally had to remake an entire. And they got a whole bunch of left guards, and then they had to figure out a right guard. So I mean, Miami's a little bit more understandable. The preseason kind of showed who should play and who shouldn't play. I can't say that about the Patriots because they literally just did that move. So it'll be really interesting. I think Miami's at a huge advantage, and they've got to get that interior pressure. This is really good timing for Miami, as you guys mentioned, because that interior line seems vulnerable. I mean, obviously, after Sunday, we may be proven wrong on that. But for them to win, they've got to stop the running game early, and then they have to put pressure in Brady's face. If they're not going to do those things, it's going to be a really long day.
Yeah, I was tweeting about it this week, but to me that matchup, that defensive line of ours, which I think is really the one unit on the Dolphins that has real elite potential for this year, versus an offensive line, ironically enough, on the Patriots that probably has at this moment more questions than the Dolphins' offensive line, and because of the timing of this trade they just did. But if they move, anybody on that right side playing up against Cam Wake is going to have trouble, right? But really on the interior side, it's not like Starks and Odrick and Mitchell are easy to handle either. Brady is like every other quarterback in the NFL. He's damn good when he's got time, and he's damn good when he doesn't have too much pressure. But if you look at his numbers when he's under pressure, his accuracy percentage and his completion percentage just falls off a cliff, and that's just every single quarterback in the whole league that happens to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and with Brady especially, you want that interior pressure, and there's all kinds of different formations, or packages for the Patriots offensive line. You're seeing, oh, maybe Josh Klein will just come in at left guard, and that would be, in my opinion, a mistake if the Patriots want to keep Brady upright, because Starks and Mitchell rotating around are going to eat that guy. I was actually a little high on him a couple weeks ago, and then he completely and utterly just looked really bad in the 4th preseason game, just really bad. I think he allowed like 5 sacks, and it was bad. And then you have Dan Connolly, who he can run block, decently, but he is year in and year out not a great pass protector. Ryan Wendell, he's pretty. I like Wendell. He can do better run blocking, but besides, he protects Brady. But then if you have the rumors of, oh no, what if Klein moves to center and you put Vollmer at left guard and then you put Wendell at right guard. Now, that might be a decent option if Vollmer can make that transition. Does anybody know if Vollmer has made that before?
He's played inside a little bit before. The issue I think they might have is he's coming off a knee, like a leg injury, and often players coming off leg injuries and playing inside when they haven't for a while, they find playing in a condensed space kind of hard, and it's much quicker. So it's a bit more kind of.
Well, I mean,
it's a bit more on your movements, more on your speeds, kind of twitch of your legs.
So I guess for game planning purposes, let's say they want to do that and they want to put Vollmer there, and let's say he is healthy. Well, you have Vollmer and Wendell, and then maybe you put Cameron Fleming on the right tackle. I think he's listed as the 2nd string, but I've also heard Marcus Cannon from Ben Volen. So you don't know what to trust. But either way, I think Cannon or Fleming will just have troubles with Wake. But what you do in that situation is you put a couple of guys that are able to at least hold their own at the guard positions, and you put Josh Klein at center, he did have snaps at center in the preseason. And you see how that works out, because pass protecting is the center's secondary job. And I would assume that Wendell would keep his control of calling out the mic and making adjustments, because it's one step over. It's not like he's going to be way out of position to see things. So you effectively take your rookie and you say, okay, rookie, just double team chip a guy. That's all we're asking you to do. Get Brady the ball, make sure you snap it correctly on the right count, and then double chip. I think, and it will help limit that interior pressure compared to their other option.
In the running game, they're going to have Gronkowski, obviously, and then we could see, I guess you have Gronk, or you slide your help to the right side to help with Wake, or you're chipping Wake with running backs. I mean, there's ways to kind of they can send their help. I think one thing we might see quite a lot of is Shelby and OV in nickel playing inside, and perhaps that's going to be a better match against kind of inexperienced players, is having kind of quick interior pressure. One thing with Vollmer being inside is just his height as well. I think a lot of defensive tackles will always kind of bring up, they love playing against tall interior linemen, so you can just get right under their pads and then just quickly say. I think that's going to be kind of I think Starks or Aldrich would have a field day with that kind of matchup, or even kind of OB inside there.
Right, and Vollmer's what, 6'8", I think?
Yeah, 6'8".
Yeah, he's huge, yeah.
That's a big boy.
Yeah.
We don't know, we don't really know what Gronk, Gronk is going to play, obviously, but we don't know between, 50 to 100% exactly where he's going to be and how many snaps he's going to take.
Right.
And it'll be interesting to see how he does. I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts about, we got a question on Twitter, what's the best way, or what are some ways that you guys think we can slow up Gronk and get him not to eat us alive like he has plenty of teams?
I would get maybe Darnell Ellaby to get a sledgehammer to his knee, and then just take the suspension. That's my best suggestion.
Honestly, I really think McCain should play. I know Trusnick is probably going to get the playing time over him, but the only negative thing I saw in coverage from McCain was that he was covering. I'd have to look up the picture to see who it was exactly, but he's covering the tight end down the field, went step by step vertically. Tight end did a dig, and as soon as he did that, McCain just he lost his footing a little bit, but he seemed to give up on the play. He had a safety over there, probably about 5 yards away. So I think he kind of assumed, okay, the guy's not going to get. I don't know if he assumed something or if he saw help over there and he just kind of didn't worry about it as much as he should have. I think it was against Dallas actually, and that was the only negative play, is that he kind of came out of it without the energy that he should have had. But he had all the physical capability to do it. So I think he needs to be on
coverage much though, did we?
Not a whole.
About 5 times. Yeah, I think I counted 5 times.
And I mean, he never really did it at Cal. He was more kind of like an edge player. So I think that is that's the biggest question in regards to McCain's game. And then we think we normally play our Sam linebacker is generally going to be on a tight end, and we may see quite a lot of 12 personnel as well with Wright, who's a pretty dangerous player, more kind of like the Hernandez kind of joker tight end, but I think so maybe we see kind of Delmas or Jimmy Wilson on him more than we would a linebacker. But yeah, it's not going to be. I don't think we're going to match up well against tight ends. We never did last year, and we're running on gas at the linebacker core already. So maybe this is kind of
it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a good time to talk about who do we think replaces Wheeler as that Sam that he's now playing in.
That is a tricky question, because as Ian mentioned, Brian McCain looks the part, man. I like his instincts to chase the ball down. I like his instincts for the most part in coverage. My only concern with Brian McCain would be... jeez. That's the singer. Anyway, Chris McCain. My only concern with Chris McCain is, does he know enough alerts? I have almost no questions about his instincts post-snap, but what about his ability to identify offensive alerts? You know, is the on a motion, is he alerting to that? So that's my only question.
And so
mainly
you've never
because
really
of his
been in that position at Cal,
kind
of like a hand-down edge rusher or...
Right. Also because, there is a learning curve for rookies in the NFL, no matter how good you are. And there's going to be things that he hasn't seen before that he may or may not know to adjust for pre-snap. But I definitely am excited for seeing some tape on him against the Patriots. And I don't believe that...
We haven't really seen him play against NFL players, really.
Right. But I do believe the Dolphins won't just be saying, okay, Trusnick, go out there for 70 snaps, you're the guy. I see a committee-type response to the... Especially because Wheeler... What?
Well, I mean, Sam plays maybe 40% of snaps anyway, so it's going to be kind of 40-50% him. But maybe with McCain playing the nickel a bit as kind of like an edge rusher with Dion out and Fide out, be kind of a bit thinner in that role. What I think we might see is we see Trusnick in first. We see kind of how the Patriots are operating with their tight ends, and then you just, because Trusnick didn't exactly play back. Trusnick played pretty well when he was at Sam the first 2 games, and he played Mike the other 2 and was a bit slow. I think that's always a hard adjustment, just changing your reads. But his feet were a bit slower. So I don't think it's bad, Trusnick. But I mean, neither of them played NFL players, so it's kind of hard to tell.
Right. We do have a little bit of a question of the linebacker situation, because like you did mention, when we are in the nickel, the Sam comes off. Now, last year what we did is we said, Sam's not coming off, he's just moving to inside, Wheeler. Now, I don't agree with that approach. but that is what the defense calls for. Now, we haven't seen much of Misi because he wasn't in the Cowboys game. So when we go into the nickel, are we going to just take the Sam off as even if Wheeler was healthy, hypothetically, would we take Wheeler off and leave Misi and Ellerby in, or what would we try to do in that situation is a big question mark to me.
Yeah, Nickel's never been a clear kind of pitch. We've seen so many different kind of amalgamations of it. So I don't think anyone's really sure what that's going to look like. I would assume it may be Misi and Ellerby just because they've played it the most and they're the better athletes, better players.
They love veterans, so yeah, that mean it wouldn't surprise me.
When you getting back to the matchup, with McCain versus whether we play McCain or Trusnick, I think that one way we could maybe slow Gronk down a little bit is just going back to that pressure on Brady. Obviously Coyle and company love to bring Wheeler in on those blitzes, and we haven't seen McCain in the regular season, obviously, and we haven't seen him against a lot of first teamers. But if McCain's flashed anything many times, it was his pass rushing ability, right? I mean, you saw him, Ian. You had plenty of good examples you put online of McCain. He missed a couple of plays in terms of finishing them off, but he gets back there pretty damn fast. And I just wonder if, from a matchup standpoint, just getting pressure, I agree. I don't think we're going to see like Trusnick the entire game, and I don't think we're going to see McCain the entire game, but I wonder if they bring McCain in there. Now, obviously, if McCain's rushing the QB, you got to wonder, okay, he might be our best bet when he's in there against Gronk, so who do you roll over to him, right? I mean, it's not an optimal situation.
I like Misi on tight ends. I think he can do it. So maybe you kind of almost have kind of a rotation where you look like McCain or Trusnick's on Gronk, but really Misi is, and you kind of hide the coverage somewhat. That could be interesting. I think there's ways in which you can kind of... It's interesting you said they love to rush Wheeler, because they didn't really rush him much, even though that's what he's good at. I think it was like 10% of plays or 15% of plays, which was not much really to be, and it was kind of a similar amount. We did rush the Sam more than anyone else percentage-wise at the time they were playing. As I call Misi Sam, whereas I know Dustin says Wheeler was the Sam.
Yeah, it's over the tight end.
Well, but then the strong side. I go by strong sides.
Well, yeah, the strong side is usually the side of the tight end. But I actually do have some numbers on the Wheeler blitzing percentages. Last year we used them like only 20% on blitzing. In the preseason this year, that's gone up to 29%. So it'll be interesting to see if that's a formation scheme or them just saying, hey, Wheeler does this well, so let's do it more.
And that's really interesting, considering that normally you're going for quite a plain defensive look as well. So I think you could even say, like, in the first preseason game, we didn't really blitz at all, or no one does. So you could even see that exponentially grow to 50%, which would be encouraging to use Wheeler in that way. And we did see the defensive ends drop more than we did last year. We've seen everyone drop. So yeah, I think there's going to be. I think for me, it's quite interesting that so many people are excited about the offense. I think defensively, there's more question marks of kind of what we're doing at safety. That's completely different. What we're doing interior, defensive line. That's completely different with more more destructive, smaller 0-1 tech. We even saw, and we have no backup 0-1 tech. So what do we do if Mitchell goes down? Obviously, it's not a huge role, but it also limits what you can do to a certain degree with a three-man front, gap scheme-wise, against the run. You can't really, or you don't want to be in a three-man front as much with Mitchell. I know he did that at Houston, but he did have J.J. Watt next to him, which kind of makes it not a three-man front.
Right, and even then, you could tell that wasn't his natural position in Houston.
No. So yeah, I think there's a lot of questions and kind of Wheeler going out, although quite a lot of fans seem to enjoy it, kind of not having Wheeler play. But I guess it's like, if someone doesn't take the job, then just because Wheeler's not playing doesn't make it a better thing.
That's true. It's a very good opportunity for fans and coaches alike to see, can it actually be worse, or can a rookie step up? Because, you know, Wheeler was very bad last year. There's no, getting around that. But at least he was a starter. He was a very bad starter. It can get worse than very bad starter. It can get, yeah, he had 19 missed tackles or something like that. And that's pretty bad. Or was it just 19 in the run game? I don't know. He had a ton of them. But you could be even worse, or, you just don't know until you know. And so, right. Big question.
And is there is there any kind of other stories or matchups, anything anyone's caught their eye with Dustin?
No, just for me, if I'm making a game plan, I am definitely attacking the middle of that defense in the passing game. I'm just doing it. I'm attacking those linebackers. I'm attacking the slot cornerbacks. And Oscar, I've harped about this particular play that I'm about to mention for a couple years now. But I want to see a jailbreak screen. I want to see it. This would be the perfect opportunity to do it. Gerard Mayo is probably their best coverage linebacker, and he is maybe slightly above average in coverage. So this is a good position to use those creative plays. I definitely want to see, like a banana route run, put Wallace in the slot and have Clay, not exclusively, move him around, but you pressure the seam with those two guys, and I think, you see some awesome things happen. And as far as running, I would try to not run it to the outside zone. I would really, really probably just try to focus on the A and B gap. Try not to bounce out to the C and D, because I just don't think it's going to be there. Obviously the running back should choose it if it is there, but game plan wise, I think cutting back to the A gap is a better choice than cutting back to the B gap, because if there's one thing Jerron James seems to be a repetitive thing in the run blocking for me, is that he gets his guy in front of him and holds him there, in a pretty good position most of the time. But one thing that he does allow is the defensive end to disengage and then go and second effort plug up the B gap. And that stopped a couple of Miller runs, and it almost stopped a Moreno run, but he did that nice little spin move out of it.
It allows a bit too much distance between him and the defender. And so
yes,
exactly.
He
wants to stay a bit closer, and that's just kind of like a basic thing where it's like...
exactly. It's a matter
savvy beating him.
Right.
Just lost some
but as far as reads go, I feel both of our running backs have about the same vision, but Moreno does have a feature that Miller does not, and that is contact balance. Once he gets contacted, he can keep his balance, whereas I don't feel the same thing about Miller. But at the same time, Miller can, take that home run.
Well, maybe we should go through and each kind of give one matchup we think we will see, and kind of a prediction of each team, maybe who they think is going to stand out or something we might see. I think that's kind of a nice way to finish it off. So if there's any what things you are expecting to see Dustin, and then
Um,
or a prediction.
no, a prediction.
Doesn't
I
need
said
to be
26.
score, doesn't
Right. Well, I mean, I already put a public score out there in the preview, so I'll stick with it. I said 27-24, Dolphins. I think that Lazer's new philosophy will help Tannehill get down the field. I never had a question about Tannehill's ability in the red zone. Going back to college, 18 touchdowns, 1 interception in his career in college, and that's continued into the NFL. My question has always been getting to the red zone. And if there's one thing I noticed in the preseason is they are consistently getting down there. So that's I'm looking forward to that.
Ian, do you have kind of any predictions, any kind of matchups you're thinking we're going to see, or anything you want to see?
I think that if the Dolphins are going to win, they're going to win between the, I guess the, not like the sideline, but like the numbers, between the numbers. That was incredibly easy for me to forget. They're going to win between the numbers. So what that means is when they're running the ball, they're going to have to, they're going to have to use Shelley Smith, get him in space. Maybe even Darren College, he kind of flashed a little bit of an ability to pull, be the lead blocker, at least on like tosses, and just try to make those cutbacks, especially Moreno. Moreno has much more upside, or at least proven ability, than Moreno's or the Miller's upside when it comes to front side cuts and being effective at knowing where the cut is and when to bounce back. So in the running game, I definitely want to see them punish the interior, test Wilfork. I mean, you're going to find out pretty quick if Wilfork's back to being a beast or not. I would test him out. I would try to wear him down, get him off the as much as possible if he is back to where he's at. I'm kind of skeptical on that because, I mean, again, like you said, I think he's in his mid-30s. He's got a ton of wear on that huge body of his. So, I mean, even if he is a little bit younger than what we're saying, he's still, he's a huge guy that's going to wear down if we're going to be going pretty quickly.
And then also a really bad injury that kind of seems to be forgotten. It's not like he's kind of a really good year.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I think passing the ball, they're going to have to use Landry, Matthews, and Gibson. I would probably guess that if you get more than 100 yards combined out of Wallace and Hartline, that's a nice thing. I mean, just, if they're going to be using Revis on the outside, and if they're going to be using Arrington and then McCourty, if they're going to be putting McCourty on roll coverage over onto Wallace, the middle of the field should be pretty open. So they're going to have to kill the Patriots using in the middle of the field with Clay, and then just keep everybody moving around, keep them guessing on offense, and that's the design of the offense. So hopefully those things come true. I picked the Patriots to win earlier this week. I've been going back and forth. I mean, if they're going to beat the Patriots, this is when they should beat them. It's just really hard to say because there's so much unknown with this team. I mean, it's easier to be optimistic about this team than last year because there's so much more talent on the team. It's just there's so many moving pieces. Like you guys said, I mean, we didn't see Misi week 3 or 4. It's a lot to sit there and say, well, we know how the Patriots work. We know their strengths, especially on offense. They play to the weaknesses of our defense exactly with our linebacking core. And, oh, by the way, we've got the linebacking core than ever. As bad as we know Wheeler is, at least we know what he can do. And we know what he will accomplish. We know that he'll miss a couple tackles, most likely. But he will also get pressures on the quarterback. Like, we know that stuff. We can assume that that's going to happen again because he's been consistent with that. It's just if the team puts it all together, we could probably win by 2 touchdowns. But if things go poorly, again, I could see it being 40-14. I mean, it's just one of those games where there's just so much unknown about the Dolphins that I'm not too comfortable picking them right now. So I would probably go 23-21 Patriots. I do think it'll be close. I don't think it'll be a blowout either way. Ultimately, I think the offense will look better. I don't know. I don't like Satella. I mean, it'll just be tough. It's a power defense facing against an offense that's supposed to be power, but we're not power. Like, it's just going to be difficult. It's going to be a difficult team to beat, I think.
Pablo, have you got any kind of thoughts on the game or predictions you want to?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo some of the things that Ian said, I think that this whole Miami Dolphins team this year is really, it's hard to get a real sense for what's going to happen this year. I mean, I feel like if everything comes together, you know, if the offense comes together, and if we can make up for that linebacker weakness through pressure and through good corner play, it could be a really fun year, you know. But if the offense, you know, if Tannehill has issues picking up the new offense when it's at its full pace, or if the receivers or people like Miller aren't reliable with their hands, it's going to mess everything up. And I think because of that uncertainty in our team, it's really hard to make any great predictions aside from it could be great or it could be really bad or it could be somewhere in the middle. I do agree with Ian that I think you know, the line is Patriots by 5, and I think that's it's not crazy that the Patriots could beat us by 7 or even 10, but I'm expecting a 3-point game. I think that hopefully the defense can get enough pressure on Brady to disrupt the rhythm and make up for that linebacker core. And, you know, the ball bounces a few ways the way you want it to a couple times, and you never know what's going to happen at home, at a home opener. So if I had a gun to my head, you know, I think I'd probably go Patriots, something like 20-17 or 20-16, something like that. But would it surprise me to see the Dolphins come out and disrupt their offense enough and make enough defensive plays to take it? No, not at all. I just think a lot of things have to go our way for that to happen, and I think it's more likely a couple of those things don't go our way. But you know, you play the game on the field, you don't play it on paper.
Well, I'm basically gonna say the Dolphins are gonna win every game this year. Not actually like win every game, but every game the day before that game, I'm gonna say they're gonna win because screw like thinking they're gonna lose. So I'd say we'll win by 10 or something. But I'll be more kind of like I think if we see Gator play more than 10 snaps, he's going to score a touchdown. Because that's all Gator does. So that's going to be like, that's my hot tip. If you really don't have a tight end in fantasy, pick up Gator. Like, all he does is score touchdowns. I don't think we're going to see no huddle at all this kind of stuff about it's going to be 10 times faster. I think maybe we see it would be close to the speed we ran the first week of preseason, where we were kind of snapping the ball between 18 and 14 seconds, but we weren't checking anything at the line. We weren't really doing anything. If they are no huddle, I predict it's going to be pretty messy because maybe they've got hand signals for all the calls, which generally you do in case there's kind of a headset malfunction or something. But you kind of want to do that in a game atmosphere where there's noise, and obviously there won't be as much noise being at home. But I just think they're going to be a huddle offense. What Laser's always talked about since he got here is tempo being from the break of the huddle to the snap of the ball. So I think we see a huddle offense, maybe they're snapping the ball around the 14-second mark on the clock, which isn't terrible, but it's not kind of like some people's prediction of every 5 seconds they're snapping the ball or whatever. I think we're going to see Revis and Clay. I think Belichick has they kept Clay quiet the last 2 games. We kind of saw the Dolphins struggle at the end of last year when teams game planned against Clay in particular and took him out of the game. So I think that's something we're going to see. And perhaps that kind of helps that interior defense as well, taking away the main target inside. I think it'll be interesting, as I kind of alluded to earlier, I think they try and get the ball to Wallace as much as they can early. And I don't think we're going to see much running game. I think with the interior line, it's not going to happen. I think if I was running this team, I'd just run outside zone the whole time when running and just stretch the defense, get fat guys running. If they're playing 3-man front, you want that nose tackle running all the time. If they're playing a 4-man front, you want them to start over pursuing, and then as you get to the fourth quarter, they're already running to the sidelines, and then you have that backside gap open up. So that's kind of how I would attack them in a run game. I would run to the sidelines, get them running in the wrong direction, and you have bootleg action off that. You have that. You can even run kind of the zone read off that. I think we're going to see quite a lot of zone read. Whether we see kind of Tannehill keep it, I'm not sure. Whether they'll do that this early, maybe they'll kind of do what San Francisco has done last year, where they limit kind of the amount they actually keep it on, or whether we see that kind of shuttle action, triple option off the zone read if there's kind of any man coming within anywhere near Tannehill. That would be really interesting to see kind of how that develops, because we've kind of seen in all the kind of mesh points there's a relief option to the side if either Tannehill gets a read wrong or kind of a safety comes up too quickly in his face, something like that. So it'll be interesting to see where that read happens, and also just how Tannehill actually reads the mesh point. So there's quite a lot of times last year where we were giving a zone read action, but I don't think Tannehill was actually reading it, or if he was reading it, he was reading it incorrectly, because he was handing off a lot of the times when that defensive end or that perimeter defender was crashing in. So it was either a kind of a fake zone read, or Tannehill was told not to keep it. So that's going to be kind of interesting. I mean, it's a really simple read. Every college, high school quarterback makes it nowadays. Mm-hmm. But just obviously the speed of the game is faster, defenders are smarter, and what Tannehill does when that defender doesn't declare, doesn't make the read easy, what does Tannehill do in that situation, whether that dump off or screen play is then used? Because obviously teams are 2 years into that zone read play, that mesh point, and the parameter defenders are getting better at making that read harder for the quarterback. And I think there's this kind of idea that a no huddle fast attack is going to catch the Patriots by surprise, but that defense has been playing it for 3 years. Their own team is a no huddle. Like, I don't see how us playing at a really high tempo is going to surprise a team that every week in practice plays a no huddle attack.
Well, and Belichick's so close with Chip Kelly, it's like...
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's not going to catch him off guard. Like, that's the dumbest thing I've heard all week.
Yeah, I don't think it's much of a physical advantage where it'll catch him off guard, but if you go no huddle in the heat,
you're keeping the personnel on the field.
Right, and
yep.
Also, supposedly New England has had a very mild summer, only having like 3 days in training camp over 90 degrees. And they're going to come in tomorrow and they're going to find a 95, 96 degree day with severe humidity. By the fourth quarter, they better be tired. I mean, we will be too, but probably not as much as they will.
Right.
I think we're going to be tired because they actually play in a huddle offense, so we're going to be more tired. And that's kind of my issue. Is if we're playing tempo with huddles, you're still allowing substitutions. You're not getting that same advantage the Patriots will have by running a no huddle, where they control the matchups, they control the defense in the same way in which Green Bay could control a matchup against Sherman. And there was kind of some radio guy was saying about whether the Patriots would have, whether the Dolphins will just not throw to Revis. And I kind of respond as well, they don't really have as much choice because they can't put their fourth target or third target on Revis every play, and they don't know where Revis is going to be, so you can't
Right,
just...
and the Dolphins have never really avoided Revis before.
Yeah.
It's not like last night, or not last night, but Thursday night, where they just completely ignored Sherman. I agree with you. I don't think we're going to see that. Just because even last year facing Revis, Wallace was targeted like 9 times. Back when he was with the Jets, we only saw him once in the previous year because he injured his ACL against us, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think it was
but even then, I think we targeted him a couple times. So I think we respect Revis, but we definitely don't avoid him.
I'd like to see them do bunch formations to try to and just see what comes out of it. That's one of my favorite formations, actually, that Miami never ran last year. I mean, there's just so much that opens up out of it just because of the confusion, especially if you're going hurry up, and even if it's not like a true hurry up where they're not switching out personnel. Clay's just a glorified tight end receiver. So I mean, you could put him out there. You could have Wallace in there. You could have one of the slots in there as well, and then just have Hartline on the outside on the opposite formation. Revis may end up on Hartline then, and then you've got, like we talked about, some of the more mediocre corners that they have. Just see which one messes up, because one of them's going to mess up. It's going to happen. It is what it is. I'd love to see more bunch formations, though.
I think we've seen it quite a bit. I'm going to see it kind of setting up the screen game a bit as well.
Yeah.
That Wallace drop was kind of like I think we need to see that with the receivers we've got, where they're not really great against versus press. You kind of need to have a bunch or stack sets, motion to get that free release, and it allows you to do those kind of. If anyone was watching Penn State today, just those quick passes to the sideline that basically work as a run game, and Penn State had no running game either, and they kind of use those passes to the sidelines to stretch the defense as an outside zone would, get defenders moving sideways and get those easy yards where you're not standing behind the pocket for 5, 3, 4 seconds, looking downfield. You have one read, you get it out there, and so I think we're going to hopefully. This is the kind of thing maybe just before we finish, we should say things we hope we see. I hope we see like 20% screen game, and just really attack it in that way. Because I think, in the same way in which Pablo was talking about kind of how Percy Harvin was used, they didn't really throw deep at all. They were giving him the ball in short yards and letting him use his... I think Percy Harvin's slightly different. He's a much stronger player and is kind of a bit more lateral agility. But kind of get the ball to him quickly and then see if he can make play in space. I'd like to see kind of Wallace do that, or even Clay to a certain extent, where he's kind of to the other side of what Percy Harvin is, kind of much stronger, and we can still get kind of in space, he can do damage.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we hope to see, what I hope to see, I'd love for us to have enough of a run game that it's a threat. I don't think anybody thinks our run game is going to be our team strength this year. But whether it's through screens, I mean, you can kind of include screens a little bit if you think about it as part of the short run game, or just traditional running. But if we can get that run game so that it's respectable and get some play action going, and then between a bunch of different creative formations, whether it be bunch or just with lateral motions, getting the matchups we want to get Clay on the right guy or to get Wallace in some space, I think that would be exciting. And I think the other thing I just really want to see is, I just want to see our defensive line come out there and just be ready to crush. I want our defensive line, no matter what kind of musical chairs New England puts together, on the interior, or whether they move off the right tackle and move into the middle, then fine, do that. Then we got Cam Wake coming on the edge, and he can eat.
I would like to see, really, I guess, I'd like to see how the corners react. Change it up a little bit. I'd like to see how our corners react, the Dolphins' corners, to how the Patriots attack on offense, because they're such a run-heavy team that we're going to have to compensate for our linebackers at some point. So, I mean, do those having two veterans out there is going to help. Finnegan and Grimes will help, but we have the Jimmy Wilson situation at safety. The Delmas situation has been pretty shaky so far. Can our corners help them out at all? Really, by locking down the outside guys, and the slot guys are the guys we really have to worry about. But who steps up in that secondary? You know, which person or people, hopefully it's multiple, are able to jump a route and, you know, make an interception in the red zone, or, you know, possibly get like a catch and run situation to, you know, change the direction, the field direction in the red zone now after a pick or something. I want to see someone step up in that secondary. It is definitely a high risk move when we picked up Finnegan and Delmas, and we really need to see that pay off early. The next couple games are pretty easy in comparison to the Patriots, so not saying they're guaranteed wins, but to come out and play well against the Patriots, secondary-wise, can really help get them past the suspension of Jones, which that's obviously a big loss. So. Okay.
Maybe before we go, since we're all here together, and since this is the day before opening day for the Dolphins, we can just do a quick hopes and expectations for the whole season. Kind of, how do you hope this year pans out, and what do you actually expect? Dustin, you want to kick that off?
Well, it's awfully broad concept, but I definitely want to see play calling be very different than last year on offense, and I believe we will. So it's an expectation, not really a hope. I want to see a progression throughout the year of our offensive line, and that includes Juwan James in certain degrees. I want to see a continued progression of Tannehill to the point that he kind of erases some concerns of his part of the Wallace and him issue. I want to see the linebacker situation pan out, because I really would rather not have to draft an inside linebacker in the first round next year, but I would gladly do it if we had to. But I would rather Misi step up and look, you know, good at the spot. I would like
to get UCLA kid in the second round, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We don't want to get into the draft talk already. We can take the UCLA kid in the second round.
Yeah, it's hard to find those first round inside linebackers. So
right.
I mean,
or Chi-Chi, like that Will kid, he's real good.
Yeah, he's all right.
Yeah. And last but not least, I would like our safety gamble to pay off, because when we signed him and everybody started saying, "Oh, Louis Delmas, the free safety." If you went back and watched Detroit, he was not a free safety. He was a strong safety. He played in the box almost all the time. So Jones is kind of the same type of player, and it kind of puts our cornerbacks on an island. Maybe not in scheme-wise, but you know, we have two guys that are more experienced at attacking an offense as opposed to being the last safety valve that Clemens was. So I just hope that's not a mistake, and that's one thing I will be monitoring.
Ian, do you want to give your prediction?
Expectations? Offensively, I'd like to see this team be, you know, pushing top 10 overall. more realistically 12 to 15. That'd be a good position. I think if they get into that range, you're looking at a 9 to 10 win team. Depending, I mean, so much happens that can swing you from a 7-win team to a 10-win team. So, I mean, it could even come down to a kicker situation again, like last year. Hopefully not. I really just want to see the core group of guys get a little bit of help. And by core group of guys, I talk about Tannehill, Wake, obviously like the star guys, Grimes, who steps up at those positions and helps, or around those guys and helps. At running back, there's someone at least, like you said, reach 1,000 yards total. That'd be good. I mean, that's all this offense really needs. They don't need a lot. I mean, you look at where they were last year. They need to get to about 25 points a game. That's not a huge jump. It's just converting one more time in the red zone, or getting to the red zone one more time per game, which is certainly not asking much. They were good in the red zone last year, they were okay in the red zone last year, but getting there, they had a lot of 3-and-outs. So, just take the little step. It's really the little things with this team. There's not a whole lot of huge overarching issues anymore like there were last year. At least there shouldn't be. Turnovers are pretty random, so you can't really predict turnovers. Literally no correlation between it. It's just very random luck that stuff happens. So I would like to see them take little, fill in the little cracks, do the little things well. Don't get a stupid holding penalty on a 3rd and 15 or 3rd and 10 that puts you in those situations. Just do your job, do the little things, and then things should fall in place off of that. I predicted this team to go 9-7. I feel pretty good about that. I mean, it's a better roster than last year. The schedule isn't horrible, and then that can also change at the drop of a hat too. So, yeah, and I mean, I guess at the end of the season, you definitely want to be at least competing for that wild card. Anything worse than that, and there's definitely going to be issues.
Mm-hmm.
Pablo, do you want to give you any predictions you have, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to repeat too much what you guys said, but I'd like, ultimately, I'd like the year to go well enough, just because it'll be fun if they win a lot. But also, I want the year to go well enough where they don't have to blow the team up after the season. Because I do think that, I think the team is, we saw a team that had virtually no offensive line last year, and Tannehill played all right. I mean, I don't know how any quarterback could have played behind that offensive line and done any better. And we didn't have as many weapons last year as we do this year. Both more on the offensive side at least. So I'd like the offense to come together enough with Lazer's play calling and hopefully with just good fundamental execution where we don't have dumb penalties on 3rd down that kill us and dumb drops that kill us. I mean, a couple times preseason, there were just a couple small things that just were killers. Just, drops in the backfield or drops on very catchable plays. And last year, Oscar, you talked about it with Hartline at the end of the season. The guy's pretty sure-handed, but at the end of the season, he had some massive drops. So I guess I just hope the offense comes together enough and the defense, and on an optimistic side, the defensive line becomes really an elite unit that can change the course of games for us. And I think if we can do that, we're pushing 9 wins. I think I'm hesitant to go over 500 because it's hard to believe a little bit, but we're on that cusp. I think we're somewhere. There's a lot of luck between 7, 8, and 9 wins, and you can be a 9-win team and have a couple balls go the wrong way, and you were a 7-win team. So my hope is that we go 9-7 and push for a wild card spot. Gun to my head, I'd probably go 8-8, and I just hope it's enough. I hope it's enough to keep this team together because I do think they're right on the cusp of doing something good. with another decent draft and with a couple of good acquisitions.
Well, I guess I'll wrap it up. I kind of hate doing predictions. I guess like the NFL at its core is unpredictable. And, I mean, Cameron Wake, Tanner Hill could all like be going fishing and getting eaten by a shark for all we know. So I mean, I think we're a 6 to 10 win team depending on what happens. What I hope happens is we're 16-0 and win a Super Bowl. Because that's the whole point of supporting a team. I'd like to see 2 Pac-12 teams get into the college playoffs or whatever they're calling them. That'd be good. The UCLA and Oregon play both in the Pac-12 conference title and then the national championship title. So I'll go with Dolphins winless, loseless, whatever it is, season. And I don't know. I mean, I just want to watch a competitive football team that can play not have to be reactive, not just have to kind of pass because they can't do anything else. I want to see a football team that can actually game plan and execute a game plan. That'd be kind of nice to see, not a team that has to survive. What I'd really love to see is a 4-minute drill. I mean, that would be fucking great. That sounds like a joke, but I mean, even Sean Payton was talking about it this offseason. It's like, we've really got to work on our 4-minute drill, and it's like, it's maybe underestimated part of offensive football is being able to get the hard yards and burn clock. That's something we couldn't do, and something no one's really talked about. I'd like to see a 4-minute drill, win every game, and I don't know, Tanner Hill for over 10,000 yards, 100 touchdowns, no interceptions. Draft Darren Smith at some point, that'd be good. Today, I think Cameron Wake MVP. Oh no, Cameron Wake Defensive Player of the Year, and I think Locker is going to win MVP. There we go. It'll be AFC title game, Dolphins against Titans, Locker against Tannehill. It's going to go crazy.
This is ridiculous.
Those are my predictions. Both Titans and Dolphins, both having not lost a game, playing AFC Championship title. There you go. That's a prediction.
That's very Troy Stratfordy. All of those predictions.
Just wait and see. If Locker doesn't die, how can he not be MVP? That's all I'm going to say. Okay, well, let's stop this here before I've drank too much whiskey. Go Pac-12. Goodbye. Does everyone else want to say goodbye? I don't know. You should really not let me in control of this thing.
Thanks for joining everybody. We'll talk to you later.
All right, take care, guys.